time for another podcast by George. Straight talk, straight from the heartland, that'll have you saying, by George, I think he's got it. Now, here's George.
Hello, hi, how are you? And welcome to another podcast by George. Well, I decided to roll out with another quick another video podcast. And by the way, I hope you're enjoying the video podcasts. They're a little bit more labor intensive. They're a little bit more expensive because of the data plan on my syndication service, but I think they're more informative, more entertaining, allowing for graphics and video, and I hope you like that. Today I wanted to talk about my favorite presidential candidate, Tulsi Gabbard, who I like on a lot of different issues, particularly the peace issue and on the environment, what we're going to be talking about today. And she's probably best known as a member of the active military. She's a member of Congress. She's in the U.S. House of Representatives. She's a veteran of a combat veteran in Iraq and still serving in the Hawaii National Guard, which is where she's from. And that dovetails very nicely with this environmental topic. She just got back from another tour, her third tour, with her National Guard unit in Indonesia, and one of her first stops was in Newton, Iowa, at TPI Composites. This is a place that makes those huge wind vanes for the wind turbines that you've seen rolling down the interstate, and she was there to talk about wind energy and the environment. And she got her career going, jump-started actually, at the age of 21 in the Hawaii State Legislature when they were building a landfill over the largest aquifer on the Big Island where she lived, and she took to office to stop that, and that's how she began. So these green issues are right in her wheelhouse. And we're going to listen to her as she takes the podium in Newton, Iowa, and then also watch a little bit of this nifty video from TPI showing how the wind vanes are constructed in Newton, Iowa. Here's Tulsi Gabbard.
I'm so happy to be here. I feel a little bit like a kid in a playground, because growing up in Hawaii, protection of our environment was something that I was and continue to be really passionate about. When you grow up in a beautiful place with a home that you love, you know, you want to keep it that way, and you want to protect it. And so that was what, for me as a kid and growing up, motivated me to get involved with politics and trying to make sure that our policies actually worked for us and for our homes, for our environment, rather than some of the short-sighted policies that we've seen for too long that end up damaging our land, our air, our water, and so forth. So, you know, I've been a big proponent for renewable energy, and so we've seen big wind energy coming to Hawaii over the years. It's been a bit of a logistical challenge trying to get things across the Pacific Ocean and then onto the islands and up the mountains and all of these things. It's great to be able to see here and see where things are actually being made, and great to see them being made here in America. This is a great backdrop. So as I'm walking through here, I'm thinking about how we can do more of this, how we can take the great work that's being done here and expand it. You know, in Washington, there's a lot of conversation about climate change, the impact that it's having on our environment. And in my view, it's unfortunate that this has become such a partisan political flashpoint, where you're either a climate believer or a climate denier, and both sides are so busy attacking one another that they're missing really what's at the heart of why we care about our environment, which is that we want to have a safe place to live for ourselves. We want to make sure that we leave behind a safe and beautiful home for our kids and generations to come. And so it doesn't have to be a choice, false choice, which is often presented to people, that you have to either protect the environment and sacrifice jobs and the economy, or you support jobs and the economy and sacrifice the environment. And I think this is what's so exciting to me about this push towards a renewable economy, a new green economy that we're seeing, is that taking action for the environment, creating good paying jobs for our people in a way that's good for our economy, are all things that can and should be done all in one fell swoop, all at the same time. And to me, this is what's at the heart of the kind of policies that I look to bring forward as president and that I've been pushing forward in Congress is to change the fossilized way of thinking from the past and where we have, you got that? Got that. Of where we have been investing taxpayer dollars through different subsidies for fossil fuel corporations and others, and taking those and transitioning them into actually investing in a new green economy, into this renewable energy future that includes a number of different technologies, obviously wind being a major one, solar being another, geothermal being another. There's new research being done in wave energy for those of us who live out and near the ocean. But there's so many different ways that we can be looking forward towards the future so that we are diversifying our energy resources in a way that is sustainable and safe for people and safe for our environment, which, by the way, is also driving down the cost of energy for consumers. So this is a win-win-win all across the board. What we've got to do as a country is make sure that the politicians keep the politics out of it and actually just focus on making the right decision for the people. I think a lot of the barriers that we've seen come from big money in politics, where those who have been supported by taxpayer dollars for a long time are afraid of losing it, they're afraid of change, they're afraid of moving forward. But when we look at how we can actually best serve the interests of the people, putting our people first ahead of corporate interests, then we can make the kinds of sensible, safe decisions for our future that I think we need more of. And by doing that, we will continue to see more opportunities like those that TPI has built here, where you're creating good jobs in a community that at one point was facing 15% unemployment rates. You're creating an opportunity for families to be able to support themselves and to be proud of the things that you're building that are not only supporting folks here in Iowa, but will go and help and strengthen communities all across the country. This is an exciting day for me, and I think it just further highlights the opportunities that are available to us as a country to make sure, when we make sure that we're investing in the right place, when it comes to energy, when it comes to our people, and when it comes to our environment. So I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be here with all of you, and would love to take a few questions if anybody has any.
Questions? Does anybody have questions? Sure. Podcast by George always has got a question, and I was able to get the first one in, actually. And on her stop in Newton, Iowa, it was the first time stateside in front of reporters since she had been excluded from the third presidential debates, the third Democratic presidential debate. She is not allowed to participate in it on a technicality, actually. She polled in about, 25 to 30 polls or something like that, and you have to reach a certain threshold in 4 of those. And she only reached that threshold in 2 or 3 of the 4 that were selected as the criteria for qualifying for this third debate. So she's not going to be allowed to debate, and that's news, and I don't know that anybody had had a chance to ask her about that before she appeared in front of the microphones in Newton, Iowa, and in front of Podcast by George. So first off here, you'll hear my question, and then her response in Newton, Iowa. Yeah, in the second debate, you kind of went head-to-head with Kamala Harris, and everybody kind of framed it in that way. But if given the opportunity in this debate and future debates, I think they'll find, correct me if I'm wrong, that your candidacy differs quite a bit from a lot of the people on the debate stage, not just Kamala Harris.
Yeah, thanks for your question. The reason that I'm running for president is because I bring a unique experience and unique skill set to what the most important responsibility the president has, which is to serve as commander-in-chief. And there are a number of issues that I'm raising that no other candidate is really focused on, specifically the cost of war and how for so long we have spent trillions of dollars on waging regime change wars that are undermining our national security, that are taking the lives of my brothers and sisters in uniform and costing us as a country dearly. What to speak of now, we've got a new Cold War and arms race and things that are only continuing to drain our economy, drain money from our communities, and make our world and our country less safe. So, I focus a lot on foreign policy because, for example, here, where we're sitting today? Why is it that we're not investing more in renewable energy? Why is it that we don't see the kind of priority being placed in every community on creating a new green economy, on creating better paying jobs in a way that's good for people and good for that community and good for our environment? People say, well, we don't have enough money. Yet they don't think twice before they write checks to send $4 billion every single month to Afghanistan. So these are the issues that I'm continuing to focus on bringing to voters across this country. It's unfortunate that we're not in the third debate, but we're going to continue to work hard. That's not the only way to speak with and meet with voters across the country. And so our people-powered campaign is going to continue.
So that was great, and I like the way that she handles the press. She's always very kind, very gracious, very thorough, make sure that everybody gets their questions in, and she gets an opportunity to answer them, and I thought she did a good job on that one. And then afterwards, they have the press gaggle where reporters get together and ask her a question. And my question had to do with this tour of Indonesia. And honest to God, I mean, this is a serving, you couldn't have a life of service, which really is what her candidacy is all about. I mean, if this doesn't illustrate that, this is exactly what she's all about. Here she is, already a serving member of Congress, running for president to help the country, and then going over as a member of the National Guard across the globe to help her country in Indonesia. And I asked her specifically about this particular tour because I don't think she gets enough notice for this and enough appreciation. She gets a lot of criticism for her worldview on international affairs, actually. And you would never see this, really, this kind of criticism, withering criticism by some folks of a serving military person, a serving member of Congress. So I think this really deserves a little extra exploration here. So that was my question. Podcast by George back again. Hi, I was there at the kickoff in Des Moines. It's good to see you too. You've just returned from a tour in Indonesia.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about how that experience was and how that was a little different as a presidential candidate, how your perspective and what you took back from that?
See, a lot of questions there. We went as a group of Hawaii Air and Army National Guardsmen and worked with members of the Indonesian military from all branches of their military. And it was an interesting response from the Indonesian military, especially because they're not even allowed to vote. Their servicemen and women are not allowed to vote in their elections, so they have no involvement in their politics. So for them to see someone who's actively serving in the National Guard and a member of Congress running for president was an eye-opening concept for them, and share a little bit about why we feel it's important to have a civilian-led military here. But our training exercise really reaffirmed something that's been drilled in me for all of my 16 years in the military, which is the importance of a problem-solving mindset. You know, for us, our exercise is focused around planning a military operation and how critical it is that you have this problem-solving mindset with three major components. One is you have to clearly understand the situation that you're in. Second, you have to be able to clearly define the problem that you're seeking to solve. And third, identify an achievable objective or goal in solving or addressing that problem. And so we were talking about this and going through this process in a military context, but you know, this is extremely relevant to us as leaders in this country as we're dealing with both foreign and domestic policy. And you know, this hits close to home for me as a soldier, because when we look at failures of our leadership in the past to abide by these fundamental principles, we see situations like Vietnam, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, where they didn't clearly understand the situation. They didn't define the problem that they were seeking to solve. And third, they either didn't have a goal, or it was a completely unrealistic or unachievable goal, which has resulted in so many of these examples of utter and abject failures, prolonged military conflict, tremendous loss of life from, you know, our troops my fellow soldiers. I mean, I served in Iraq and saw and experienced firsthand the daily cost of war. Folks who paid the price for failures leaders to do these basic things prior to launching military action. So for me, this is the kind of problem-solving mindset that I bring and that I seek to bring as president to both foreign policy as well as our domestic challenges, because you can find many examples here as well. You know, whether we're talking about healthcare or the environment and climate change, infrastructure, how policies are often short-sighted and they fail to do those basic three things.
I have one last question.
One of the biggest reasons that I support Tulsi Gabbard, and I've said this on prior podcasts, but if you just consider the fact, consider how many people, Democratic and Republican, who want to get rid of Donald Trump. He reminds me of that scene in Star Trek where they're trying to, Shatner, or the Captain Kirk is trying to kick the Klingon off of the cliff. That's what the Trump presidency reminds me of. Well, there are a lot of people that would like to get rid of that guy. But you not only have to get rid of him, you've got to undo his legacy, what he's started, what he's well underway with. Well, how do you do that? My point is you pick the next president who's the most jarring juxtaposition to Donald Trump that you could ever get. And here's the point. Even if you elect Bernie, the revolution guy, there's probably not going to be much of a revolution domestically just because of the election of a president. That's probably going to be incremental change. You're probably going to be hard-pressed to even notice a revolution because of Congress, because of the Supreme Court, because of the electorate. But in world affairs, I think you could see a dramatic change, particularly when it comes to these interventionist wars and climate change. So just imagine a 180-degree switch to Tulsi Gabbard, as opposed to Trump. She's young. She's articulate. She's intelligent. She's all about service to country. She's already serving in Congress. She's served at the state level. She understands how things work. And world leaders, people like Macron and Trudeau and people like that, they would come running, folks, to Washington, D.C. to meet with her after having to deal with Trump over the last 3 years or so and work on things like climate change and the Middle East crisis and so much more. Because there isn't any world leader, except maybe the folks in Israel, that like anything that Donald Trump has done. So she would be great, and they would really like to meet with her just like we did in Newton, Iowa at TPI Composites. And we'll update this story. We'll follow her candidacy. She says she's in for the long haul, even though she missed the third presidential debate, was excluded from that. She says she'll get into the fourth one. I think there's going to be more of these things. And then she says she'll be here come the Iowa caucuses in February. And so will we. Right now, that's another podcast by George.